gather round me, children, I'll tell you the news. Don't worry about the names or dates, you already know it's true. Your doctor hates your baby, the prime minister's a ghost, and all them folks are sailing here 'cause they're in love with boats. Superfoods can save us from all our evil sin. JFK and Elvis own a bar in Wisconsin. And vaccinations were created by the CIA to steal votes from Bernie Sanders and turn your babies gay. So click the link you think you'd like and get tooled for a fight against those lefty fascist communists who are leaning too far right.
Hello and welcome to Not Another Fake Newscast. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jerry.
And this is episode 4. I'm so glad to see that you've all came back to listen to us, and we have got a good one in store today.
Fake newscasters, you're going to love this. You're going to love this shit.
So, where to begin?
Well, I mean, first of all, as always, we are available on www.notanotherfakenewscast.com. We are at PGMcast on Twitter and on Facebook.
We've got patreon.com/PGMcast. If you can come and donate, it really helps us along. We've got our YouTube channel, which is PGMcast.
Yeah, we're PGMcast pretty much everywhere.
If you can't find us under PGMcast, you can definitely find us under Not Another Fake Newscast. We're pretty much one of the only people out there doing this.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks everybody for your support. We it was our first month on iTunes, and we got shitloads of downloads and listens. So yeah, we very much appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us. Also to our 4 patrons, thanks very much for
Everything,
choosing.
for supporting us, for chatting to us on our Discord server. I mean, anyone that is donating over the $6 mark gets onto our Discord server. They talk to us directly. They can talk to us about the episodes, what they want to see, what they think. Generally, talk to us when we're drunk. You know, it's good. It's good. It's good chat.
Tell us what music they're listening to, Matt. You know, just anything you like.
Which is convenient because it's the same music we listen to, so it makes life really easy. Don't join us if you've got a really shit music taste.
Yeah. We don't want you. We don't want you guys. That's not true.
No. To be honest, if you've got a shit music taste, I'm okay with that. So we're gonna jump right in. It's kind of big in the news at the present moment. It's an episode we've been sitting on for the last about a month. I've mentioned it in a couple of Google Hangouts with those conspiracy guys. All the love for those conspiracy guys. And yeah, so we're going to spin you a web. We've got the Guardian to thank for a lot of this because it was a couple of headlines from them that pointed us in the right direction.
They broke this story and they wrote a fantastic article. In fact, I'll find out who it was that wrote the article because they deserve a lot of credit for it. And
fuck me, honestly, we went down a rabbit hole of madness. You should see how crazy this gets.
I really wish I hadn't found out her name because I don't think I can say it. It's Carol Cadwallader, I think. It looks like it's like a...
Cadwallader?
It's like Welsh. Or,
Carol with an E.
Yeah.
So like Carol...
Cadwal...
Anyway,
you're awesome, Carol.
She's probably also... if you see her in the news because, like, I don't know, if something happened to her, like she was in a car accident or that...
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Because the story she wrote was massive. So, with all of that being said, I think we should talk about a man. Is how to begin this. Talk about a man called
Nigel Oakes.
That's the one, called Nigel Oakes.
Okay.
So, Nigel Oakes was a TV producer, Monte Carlo TV producer, and then he worked for a advertising agency. But around 1990, I believe, he started up a company called...
SCL?
No, prior to that, institute...
this is the BDI?
Yes, BDI. So that was the Institute for Behavioural Studies, essentially. It was a for non-profit company that... for non-profit? It was a not-for-profit company. And they essentially took some scientists and started looking at the way that people were using social media, the way they were using the internet, the way they would decide on their votes, the way they would do things like that. And They worked for a non-profit for quite some time and done their bit. And then in 1993, Mr. Oakes decided he was going to set up his own company called SCL.
And monetize that shit.
And he did. He did monetize that shit, Jerry. So SCL Group essentially done this they done it for... there's a whole series of case studies, but essentially they done it in India, they done it in Trinidad and Tobago, they done it in South Africa.
They did a lot of work in the developing world, and they would quite happily admit and boast even on their website that they were capable of, fomenting coups in other countries, that they have been involved in getting people into power. Get involved in, obvious as well as that, to be fair, like doing kind of positive stuff like rolling out sex education programs and stuff in Africa.
Oh yeah, fundamentally what they weren't doing was all bad. It was just, they were just pay for hire. They were essentially digital mercenaries. Yeah,
and digital marketing and getting messages out there. And yeah, the problem with technology like that is that it can be used for good or bad. And turns out there's a lot of bad guys out there with a lot of money. Who knew?
So it gives you just an actual idea of the places that SCL have said they've influenced elections in. That's Italy, Latvia, Ukraine, Albania, Romania, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Mauritius, India, Indonesia, Thailand, Taiwan, Colombia, Antigua, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, Trinidad and Tobago, and they tried not to get involved in elections in the UK, and they ceased getting involved at all in them in 1997 because the staff members, quote, did not exhibit the same aloof sensibility as projects abroad, which possibly means they didn't have as grey area with their black and white beliefs when they were willing, like
it's all right to like be totally disengaged and detachment when it's also like I'd much rather work in like St. Vincent and the Grenadines and St. Kitts and Nevis than fucking Clapham or whatever.
We're going to send you to Clapham, or we're going to send you to Antigua. Can I be on Team Antigua?
Well, Team Antigua all the way, motherfuckers.
Always, and that actually goes for now. In the event someone wants us to record a podcast and they're not sure if they want us to record it in Scotland or Antigua, we definitely want to do that in Antigua.
We are Team Antigua, definitely.
Yeah, always.
So basically that's what they do. They were involved in elections and stuff. But what they weren't involved in so much was data mining. So
they had an intern. The intern's got a familiar surname.
Her name is Sophie Schmidt.
Schmidt. Is that like the Google guy?
Well, yeah, so Eric Schmidt was her father.
That's her father?
Eric Schmidt, yeah, it was and is still her father.
We didn't disown her there. No. Sorry.
Sophie, I am your father. So he's what, CEO of Google? Is that correct?
He isn't, well, yeah. I mean, he's certainly the man in charge of Google. I don't know if the actual official title that he holds is CEO, but yeah, he's certainly the man in charge. CEO.
He's CEO of Google. So he's his net worth apparently is $12.4 billion US. So he's doing okay.
So he's worth fucking tons, man.
But Sophie was doing some work for SCL Group as an intern, and she came back to London, visited a few years later, and had a meeting with Nigel Oakes.
And she was like, Nigel, what we are doing here is great, but what we could be doing through your skill set and the stuff that you're doing is, data mining stuff. So my dad and his friends know a guy.
Yeah. And she suggested that it was time for SCL Group to sit down and talk to a company called Palantir. Now,
Palantir's got a relatively famous owner, is that correct, Jerry?
The CEO of Palantir is a guy called Peter Thiel, and Peter was one of the founders of PayPal.
Of Tesla, yeah, he's a friend of Tesla.
Yeah,
that's
so
what they call him.
Him and Elon Musk. Is that like a friend of Dorothy or not?
No, definitely not the same.
All right, okay, cool.
Absolutely not the same. So he's a friend of Elon Musk.
Elon Musk and him were one of the 5 people who set up PayPal. Peter Thiel went on to he's CEO of a company called Palantir, and Palantir are a data analysis company who work for both the NSA in America and GCHQ in the UK. So they're massively wired into the intelligence agency. They do basically the kind of stuff that Snowden was warning us all about.
So yeah, just a quick recap there, just because this is a lot of information heavy. Essentially, Palantir worked for the military in the UK and the US, amongst other places, data mining. I mean, the reason they were put forward to SCL Group was because they collect data via social media and internet usage and everything else on everyone.
And interestingly enough, Peter Thiel was the first outside person who wasn't involved in the setting up of Facebook. So it wasn't like one of Zuckerberg's friends or whatever, or one of the guys who were one of the founders of Facebook. He was the first outside guy to buy shares in Facebook. I think in like 2005 or so, he bought 10% of Facebook. So bear that in mind.
So the guy who's doing data mining for the military also owns 10% of Facebook. Might not be related, but might be.
It's certainly a point of interest. Think about it next time you're using Facebook, and think of it in the context of everything else that we are just about to tell you.
Dick pics and Messenger. He's seen your dick. That's what I'm saying, you know.
I know. I have warned you about sending dick pics, though.
Stop sending them to Jerry, because he doesn't even appreciate them.
I'm not even that into dicks.
Not that into dicks. But anyway, so SCL decide that this is a lucrative business, because it fucking is.
I would hasten to add, for legal reasons, that Palantir have admitted that they met with SCL, but have been quite forthright in saying that they have no working or business relationship with them.
Yeah, so we're not saying that they actually directly work alongside each other, but we know that certainly they
but
met up.
We know that they met, and
we know that the pretense for them meeting up was them being suggested that they should talk to this data mining company. So for all I know, they exchanged notes over dinner and just gave him an idea and pushed him in the right direction or whatever. But certainly they've suggested they've not done any actual business with SCL Group.
Yeah, that's true. That's what they say. So moving on from that, SCL Group was eventually bought over.
No. So in 2003, they set up a subsidiary group in the US.
Right, correct.
When I was reading, I'm not fully sure I understand why. It was kind of suggested in some of the stuff that I was reading that it's easier to be involved in American politics when you're an American company. And Cambridge Analytica was set up as an American company rather than being an actual group, a part of the SCL Group.
Yeah.
So it's a standalone company because they both have different CEOs.
Yeah.
But the CEOs are on the board of directors for like SCL Group. So and they are, even though they are not the same company, it's relatively safe to say that they are in fact. In fact, there's direct quotes.
The CEO of Cambridge Analytica is a guy called Alexander Nix, and he did an article for Campaign. He's done interviews with Campaign, who are like a kind of online marketing magazine. Basically, it's all stuff about marketing and digital marketing. And in interviews,
the best websites.
In interviews that he's done with them, he has called SCL Group and Cambridge Analytica the same company.
Is that the same magazine that he done an article for?
Oh, we'll get to that later.
Alright, good. We'll get to that. Cool. Is that when we get to the absolute denial?
Yes.
Right, cool. We'll get to that. So yeah, so essentially, Cambridge Analytica gets set up, and they needed some money.
Or they either needed some money or somebody took an interest in investing in them, certainly. So
there's a man called Robert Mercer. Robert Mercer is very, very rich. So a bit of background to Mr. Mercer. He essentially worked for IBM in the 80s. Actually, prior to his work at the IBM, he worked for Naval Intelligence and Development, and he is quoted in essentially saying that they weren't really doing as much hardcore work as they should, and I'll provide the direct quotes, but essentially he was unimpressed with their lack of motivation and drive to really fucking do things. So he went to IBM and he created, which is still used today, standardization for speech recognition software.
Yeah.
So that's another data point you should take into account here. So the man in question we're talking about created a standardized software component for voice recognition stuff.
Like I have found articles online which describe Robert Mercer as a brilliant computer scientist, and also like he was a pioneer in early artificial intelligence as well. So
I mean,
he's
like,
a smart guy.
It's properly like from that point of view, he is an absolutely above board tech. He's a scientist. He's a computer.
Like all of these guys are, like Peter Thiel, Eric Schmidt. You know, they're all big tech guys. They're all super smart guys. They're all extremely successful, extremely wealthy.
So Mr. Mercer, he actually made his money not from doing the super cool science shit, but he went to a hedge fund.
Right, he's a co-owner of one of the world's most successful hedge funds.
If not the most successful hedge fund.
It has a 71.8% annual return, and it basically works on algorithms and shit.
So a bit of background in their company. This is a boring bit, but it's just to give you an idea. Essentially, they only employ theoretical physicists and mathematicians to work in the stock exchange. So they still invest, but they don't invest from guys that have been working in that have actually been working the stock market.
Yeah, they're not financiers.
They don't take any of that. Essentially, they just take mathematicians, theoretical physicists, and they look at it on a purely mathematical basis. They use algorithms to solve money, and they're doing
shitloads of money.
So actually, in question, the investment portfolio is called Medallion.
Right.
And Medallion, you can only invest in if you are a member of the company.
If you've got a hairy chest.
If you've got a hairy chest and you're from the 70s.
Sweet.
The only way so I'm halfway there. But yeah, so, because I'm from the 70s, I'm not. So
you want to see his chest though? Fuck me.
If you want to see my chest, fuck him. It's going to be a lot of money in the Patreon for that.
No. Yeah, okay.
So essentially, you can only invest into a Medallion if you work for Mercer.
Alright. Sounds like a pretty good incentive to work for him. Can I fucking work for him?
That's why there's
Please.
like that almost 0% turnover of staff.
I have a funny feeling that any chance that I might have ever had of working for Robert Mercer is going to be destroyed by this podcast.
By the time this podcast finishes, Mr. Mercer is definitely not giving me a job.
Right.
I actually approached a financial institute to see if I could invest in any of Robert Mercer's portfolios. I'm not even kidding. I did genuinely do this. Only because when I was looking into it, I found that the company. There's a company called in fact, I won't say the company for legal reasons, but they're based in Glasgow and they handle the investment portfolios for them. This actually is a thing. Right. So I sent them an email and said, "Can I invest into this?" And they said, "No."
No.
They said, "No. You have to be a."
Rich as fuck, motherfucker.
No, you actually don't. You can invest in it as little as like $100 or something like that. Right. But you have to be a resident of Canada. Why you would then have a Scottish company to be doing it? It's funny that we should mention Canada. Canada comes up a few times. But yeah, so I've got the emails. I'm not really sure how I can provide that information to you guys, but I'll try and find a way that I can show you the ins and outs of that. There'll be a lot of shit that's been blacked out in that. But yeah, so you can't.
So Robert Mercer, you were telling us about Robert Mercer. He's got a lot of cash. Yeah, he's got a lot of cash. He co-owns potentially the world's most successful hedge fund. He also he chose to buy out or invest in Cambridge Analytica. We've read various reports online that he owns about 90% of the company. He seems to have invested a whole shitload of money in it. He's also invested a lot of money into another one of our favourites, Jerry. Breitbart News, indeed. So he is like the biggest donator to Breitbart News as well. It's also been stated at times that he may be a smidgen bit of a white supremacist, but he has actively denied this. But we would like to make it very clear that he has actively denied that. But he has been alleged that he's a white supremacist. Yeah. I mean, but he has said. I'm not saying that he is. I'm saying that that's what's been alleged before. Yes. And that comes a lot of the back of being involved with people like Breitbart News and stuff like that who are alt-right. He also was Ted Cruz's single biggest political donator. The Zodiac Killer. And I believe Ted Cruz is the Zodiac Killer. Sure. And I believe that he also invested money in Donald Trump's campaign. I believe so, yes. He was one of the investors in Donald Trump's campaign. Weirdly, there's another Mercer involved with Donald Trump. Well, yeah, like his daughter was also like part of Trump's transition team, Rebecca Mercer, and she's like the CEO of like Uber. Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm almost 100% certain of that. I'm actually going to confirm that just to be sure, but I'm pretty confident.
But basically, there's a lot of big tech people involved in this. So Robert Mercer, he invested in Cambridge Analytica up to 90% according to reports, and he also placed a guy in as vice president, a guy who will probably be familiar to most of you.
Oh, we're talking about the guy who used to work at Cambridge Analytica, or this is the vice president?
Yes.
What? Like Steve Bannon?
Steve Bannon, motherfuckers.
So like the guy with all the issues with Trump. Well, the guy who worked with Trump, who's got all the issues with Trump's son-in-law.
Oh, Jared Kushner.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So he worked for them as well, which is awfully convenient because he also is one of the founders of Breitbart.
Breitbart.
So you know.
So all these people are tied into the Trump administration, and Cambridge Analytica on their website, I encourage you to go and have a look on their website. They basically boast that they are the people who won Trump the election. And if you look at the methods which they use to do that, it's very interesting because they reckon they took like 5,000 data points on 220 million people in the US, and they have targeted specific swing states, places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, which needed to be swung one way or the other in order to win this election for either, you know, the Democrats or the Republicans to get a Trump or a Clinton victory. A lot of money was spent with them, and you know, Robert Mercer, obviously a right-wing Republican backer of, you know, Trump. Originally Ted Cruz, but when Ted Cruz didn't win the primary to become the candidate, he then threw his weight behind.
He was
Donald
fundamentally
Trump.
backing the Republicans. It didn't really matter who was at the head of the Republicans. He was backing the Republicans to win.
But Cambridge Analytica, SCL group, their sort of modus operandi in these elections is to mine data from Facebook, social media,
Twitter,
build up
Google searches, all
build
that
up a
kind of stuff.
profile based on the kind of things that you are liking on there, the kind of articles that you're commenting on, sharing, etc., and build an idea of how they can influence you.
That's why like loads of 42-year-old women in Michigan got fucking adverts about how Donald Trump loves cats.
Yeah, big cat lover Trump.
But yeah, so that's essentially what they do. I mean, I know I jest about that, but what they do is they gather details on people and then they
use targeted advertising.
Yeah, so who's likely not to vote, and then what can we do to make them vote based on their beliefs and sensibilities.
There's also talk that they perhaps deliberately persuaded Democrats, people who they knew were going to vote Democrat, but who they thought perhaps weren't big fans of Hillary Clinton. They used targeted ad campaigning to persuade them to not show up.
Yeah,
not turn up and
essentially
vote.
all they done was made the essentially all they done was make the swing states in the favour of Donald Trump to the best of their ability. I mean, they do actively in interviews use words like psyops.
Yeah, they talk about psyops.
They're as much as we're talking about this, and as much as there is, I believe, kind of legal disputes between the Guardian and them at the present moment regarding the articles and stuff, they're not shy about this in their case studies on their website or on any of their affiliate websites.
No, like I think SCL Group, I was reading an article in...
All joking aside though, if you go to read an article, you might find out that the fucking article's not there because
we've
we're hitting paywalls that we didn't have yesterday. There is parts of their websites that you now go to that are now down.
There's a great article about SCL Group on a website called slate.com, which it's entitled "You Can't Handle the Truth, PsyOps Propaganda Goes Mainstream."
So this was their launch. This was like when they launched what they do really.
Well, yeah.
What was the event?
It was DSEI, yeah, Defence
Systems and Equipment International.
So they were running a simulation of the idea of this was that there's been a smallpox outbreak in London, and they are persuading people to stay indoors because if people go outside, then they're more likely to contract this smallpox. So
I can't begin to stress. This was at this event, they had set up like a fake command centre, and they had a guy who was narrating, this is what's happened, there's been a smallpox outbreak in London,
and this is how we're going to control
take it away. And then they show, the guys are there in the control centre, and they're showing how they use their systems and how they use their technology and how they use their methodology to control the media for that piece of information.
Yeah, so this article was published on September 19th, 2005, so you're talking 12 years ago.
So that's like 2 years after Cambridge Analytica was formed.
Yeah, but so this is how long ago these guys were planning for this shit. And basically, yeah, Weirdly, as I've just realised as you say that, so this was 2005. Yeah.
So this was before there was, say, I don't know, like a random epidemic that hit Africa not so long ago.
Ebola and stuff like that. Interesting. Just a point of interest. But yeah, so their proposed way of dealing with a smallpox outbreak was to push information, false information, disinformation to media outlets, to reporters, to make it appear that there had been an outbreak in a chemical factory in London and that there was an invisible toxic cloud outside, have it being rolling on 24-hour news stations to persuade people that they needed to stay inside because to go outside would be incredibly dangerous. So, while, the Londoners are fretting over these fictitious toxins, the government can actually do stuff behind the scenes and contain the smallpox outbreak. Now, Mark Broughton, who is SCL's public affairs director at the time, it was put to him by this reporter that, it's propaganda. Is that not a bit of a grey area, a bit dodgy? And his answer was, if your definition of propaganda is framing communications to do something that's going to save lives, that's fine. But that's not a word that I would use for that.
The beauty is, their company literature describes SCL's niche as psychological warfare.
Yeah.
Which is fucking a public diplomacy, psychological warfare, and influence operations.
Yeah. So that's
your official standpoint.
That's the people you're dealing with. So when we look at how they have, they have made no bones about claiming that they are the people who won the election for Donald Trump.
I mean, it states it on their website. I can't begin to
states it on their website.
Also,
it states it in an article written by Alexander Nix, who is the CEO of Cambridge Analytica. He has written an article for Campaign, who are this online marketing magazine, stating that's what they did, that they won the campaign for Trump.
So were they involved in any other big events that happened around the world recently?
Well, before we get onto that, I would like to discuss their method, how they have went about doing this, because you're talking about targeted advertisements. Now, it's difficult for us to know exactly what adverts they're pushing on people, but there certainly has been a suggestion, and I'm not saying that this is true. I am simply stating
it's
that
very difficult when we research this. I can't get it straight. As we research this, the information that we're getting is from various news sources, news outlets and forums and other things that are talking about it, because they produce some amount of information in the case studies, and then other people are looking into what they're doing. There's a lot of random journalists doing investigations and stuff into them for obvious reasons.
Yeah, also, I've never been more scared of getting sued in my life than I am right now.
No, not at all. I mean, to be honest, if you don't hear this episode in about the first 3 days, don't be 100% certain that you'll be able to hear it in the 4th or 5th day.
Well, I'm sure we'll be fine, but we just need to be really careful with our language. So it has been suggested in some areas, in some sources that we're looking at. I'm not saying that this is definitely the case.
We'll provide all the sources that we've seen all the information on, unless it's behind a fucking paywall now.
That they may have been using fake news style advertisements to persuade people. So things that look like they are coming from reputable news sources, but really it's just like a marketing tool to try and persuade people.
Was there no someone else that was? Is there no something that's happening at the moment in the press?
Well, it's
about something very similar.
So I would presume that most of you people are aware of the ongoing investigation by the FBI into Trump's collusion with Russia, with alleged hacking by Russians into the election campaign.
We spoke about this in our pilot episode. That was 4 months ago.
We spoke about the fact that, you know, if people were really pushing fake news onto the electorate, that
it's fundamentally a federal offence at minimum.
It's an offence. It's certainly worthy of an investigation, and there is an investigation ongoing right now. It's certainly seems to be parallels between the methods that are used and have been claimed to be used by SCL, by Cambridge Analytica in elections, and the sort of language that's being used to discuss how these Russian hackers are supposed to have influenced the election in America.
Now, I would also at this point like to point out that SCL and Cambridge Analytica, but more importantly SCL at this point, are very, very, very widespread across the entire world. I mean, they have... So to give you an idea, there's a company called Ovleno. Ovleno are a start-up from an Indian politician's son, but if you actually go to their website, it says SCL India.
Yeah.
So, and the website, as far as design goes, is the same fucking website, man. It's just... It looks very similar, and there'll be a theme there as well. You'll probably notice with a lot of websites that we put up. Yeah,
so like SCL's website, Cambridge Analytica's website are very similar. There's also another company.
Well, so just before that, so getting back to Ovleno quickly, essentially, Ovleno got their essentially director, CEO over to talk to Trump, to talk to his campaigners, to better understand and target Asian Americans. The Economic Times that says that it was on Cambridge Analytica's recommendations that Team Trump ran an ad in Hindi, and Trump's daughter-in-law went to celebrate a Indian festival at a Hindu temple in Virginia. So which was a key swing state. So I mean they're far-reaching with their ability. So even to say that if it was Russia, there's nothing to say that there isn't a SCL Russia component that exists either. Do you know what I mean? There most certainly is in India. There most certainly is in other countries.
And we're not saying that there is an SCL Russia.
That there is either.
Just that there could be potentially. You know, it's certainly they seem to have had branches all over the world. They previously had a branch that was called SCL Canada, but all online reference to that has been wiped. This is allegedly, according to
according to a source in the Guardian.
One of the Guardian articles.
The weird thing is though, the address for SCL Canada is a very similar address to another company.
Well, it's exactly the same address and phone number as a company called Aggregate IQ. Now Aggregate IQ are the marketing firm, which if you go on their website.
Once again, it's a very familiar template that they're using there on their website.
The main quote on their website, which is just a one-page website, by the way, there's no links or anything else there, it's quite sparse, gives you their address and their phone number, which allegedly, according to The Guardian, was previously the address and phone number of SCL Canada.
They may have just moved into the same office.
Yeah. Potentially.
I mean, but it does state on their website, without a doubt, the Vote Leave campaign owes a great deal of its success to the work of Aggregate IQ. We couldn't have done it without them. Now the reason
that's a quote by Dominic Cummings, who was the campaign director of Vote Leave. So this now brings us on to the Brexit vote.
Now the reason that's weird is because Robert Mercer is apparently very good friends with a man called Nigel Farage, who may not... For our American listeners and Australian listeners and that type of thing, to let you know that Nigel Farage, I'm much more willing to say liable things about him, but essentially Nigel Farage is the leader of UKIP, which was like I mean, it's a political party, but I'm going to use the term loosely. It was essentially there to create to fracture the UK's vote, and when it was coming towards Brexit.
UKIP stands for UK Independence Party, and their main goal, and they were quite open about this. Their main goal was to get the UK out of the European Union.
Even though Nigel Farage worked at the European Union.
Yeah, well, he was an MEP, but he was also like, you know, Nigel Farage is an ex private financier, an ex like hedge fund manager, banker type person,
And he's a friend of Mercer.
and also like his party don't seem like immigrants very much, but he's married to a German woman. Yeah, you explain that to me.
Who ironically also does his finances, which anyway.
Like most immigrants, she fucking probably hates him too.
Nah, no doubt. So there's a strange connection here.
So Nigel Farage is very good friends with Robert Mercer, and VoteLeave.eu. They were like one of the major campaigners for the UK to leave. Their communications director told this Guardian reporter, Carol, wonderful journalist that she is,
Welsh.
that it was Mercer who had directed Andy Wigmore to get his company, Cambridge Analytica, to help the Leave campaign. That's what it says.
Cambridge Analytica?
Yes, that's what it says. So yeah. Now, at the moment, there are legal proceedings against The Guardian for this article, but essentially
What we can guarantee is Aggregate IQ were directly involved doing a very similar thing to what Cambridge Analytica do.
Yes.
And as far as the Guardian's reports and sources have shown, that Aggregate IQ worked out of the same office with the same address that SCL Canada had
previously.
SCL Group are the holding company essentially of Cambridge
Analytica.
Analytica. So there is certainly links across this. Whether or not they're true or not, we can only go with the sources that are available to us.
Robert Mercer is definitely friends with Nigel Farage. Andy Wigmore, who is the communications director of VoteLeave.eu, claims that it was Robert Mercer who put them in touch with Cambridge Analytica and Alexander Nix. Now they're denying all of this now, and actually there's an ICO investigation into Cambridge Analytica and the SCL Group and the Aggregate IQ just now, and it's the Information Commissioner's Office. Basically, there's obviously a bit of concern from the authorities in the UK that this stuff is a bit of a grey area in terms of legality, and I think actually what they're trying to do is to find out how these companies work to maybe build a framework of legislation for the future, because essentially what's happened is that the tech is ahead of the law in this regard.
Essentially there's no law to govern what is being collected in the internet because there's no real law to govern what's going on the internet.
Yeah, and there's also no law to govern what sort of targeted marketing can be pushed onto people, and
essentially even digital newspapers and stuff like that can be a lot more loose with their information and facts.
You also have issues with like campaign funds and stuff, like how much people are spending on this, because Aggregate IQ, all in all, if you look at the expenses that were submitted by the Leave campaigns, separate Leave campaigns, but across all of them, around 7 million was spent with Aggregate IQ.
But the thing is, there's actually another way that you could work around it. Because see if you wanted to invest, say, in like a young fashion designer.
Look, right, we will get onto that in a moment. But the major thing here is that these companies are being investigated by the ICO, and due to that, it appears that Cambridge Analytica and SCL Group are trying to put a lot of distance between themselves and Aggregate IQ, and they are saying that they have absolutely no relationship with Aggregate IQ, that they are they're not affiliated in any way, they have no professional relationship or contract with them, that they are an entirely separate company which have no connections to SCL Group or Cambridge Analytica. However, in an article with Campaign magazine on February the 10th, 2016, which, according to the website, was written by Alexander Nix. His name is there as the author of this article, and in that article, he says, recently, Cambridge Analytica has teamed up with Leave.eu, the UK's largest group, advocating for a British exit or Brexit from the European Union to help them better understand and communicate with UK voters. We have already helped supercharge Leave.eu's social media campaign by ensuring the right messages are getting to the right voters online, and the campaign's Facebook page is growing in support to the tune of about 3,000 people per day.
Is that the article, Jerry, that's now behind a paywall that you can't get to?
So, like, genuinely, this is the fucking God's honest truth. I would not lie to you people out there. I read this article yesterday, and like, just searched in Google, brought this article up, went into it, was able to read it no problem.
Send it to me.
I sent it to Paul. I have it saved in my pocket on my computer, so I'm still able to read it. But when I tried to get into it tonight, it was like behind the paywall all of a sudden. Now Alexander Nix has actually done an interview with Campaign in the last day or two, in which he states that this article is actually false, and that it was written by an advisor of his. Let me find the exact quote from him. But yeah, he's basically done an interview with Campaign, and in order to distance himself from Aggregate IQ, from the Leave campaign, he said that they did no work for the Leave campaign, that the article, which has his name as the authorship, wasn't written by him, it was written by an advisor or, an underling, and that they had made a mistake in information that they'd given, basically.
Yeah, so...
We'll put the links up to all of this stuff.
And you can take that kind of as you want, you can take that piece of information, we can only provide you what's available there. I will say, from a personal point of view, it's very telling that suddenly that page is behind a paywall now, when it wasn't yesterday.
Yeah.
Because it means that then people don't really have access to that page unless they
so they can't read the quote from him which says we were working with Leave.eu.
That just might be a coincidence, but it might not be.
There's an investigation ongoing. SCL, Cambridge Analytica, are saying that they have nothing to do with Aggregate IQ, and they're saying that they did no work with the Leave campaign, but the CEO is on record having an article attributed to being written by him stating that they were, so you can draw your own conclusions from that.
So what we also discovered when we were looking into the Leave campaign and the way they were spending money, which was really bizarre and fun, was sometimes you've got lots of money, say like, I don't know, just over £500,000, say about £625,000 pounds, for example, in your kitty, and you have to get rid of your money.
So this is related to an article that was in the Metro back in August last year, 2016.
They've forgotten to pull, by the way, because they're going to pull it. So again, this is another one that we'll probably save in Jerry's time to make sure it doesn't disappear.
Yeah, so it says that a fashion student was handed £625,000 by the Vote Leave campaign.
Think about that. That's a 23-year-old fashion student. Was
given just grand.
Was given just over £500,000 from the Leave campaign, and as far as the article suggests, it's because why give the money to old people when you can give the money to a young person and use it to fund their social media to make sure that they can bring on young voters and stuff, because he's hip, he's cool, he's a fashion designer, he's with it, he's on the pulse. But he thought to himself, dealing with all this social media is really difficult. How am I going to sort out all my social media to make it work?
So this is a boy called Darren Grimes, his name is, and he has stated that he spent a lot of the money on a political consultancy called Aggregate IQ.
I'd take a stab in the dark and say a lot of that money was roughly 600,000, but I can't be sure. But
I would also take a stab in the dark and suggest that perhaps that's who he was told to spend that money with.
Yeah, I mean, there is two pictures of him. One is when he's giving us the finger next to a picture of the Queen that says...
He's not giving us the finger, he's pointing at her.
Oh, sorry, it just looks that way.
That's defamation, motherfucker.
Libel. He said libel, drink. So he's not giving us the finger, he's pointing at a picture of the Queen that I believe he has in his house or something, the looks of things. And it says, me and my homegirl. And the other picture that he's got...
I'm just laughing because drink was a very, very specific joke for one person.
Rachel right now is doing shots. She's been waiting for it the whole episode. But so the other one is him weirdly just fucking standing about with a
drone?
With a drone and sunglasses on.
Not like a bomb brown people drone, just
No,
like
no,
a,
no,
just like a
fly about, take pictures of people for social media drone.
yeah, just one of them.
Maybe one that was provided to him by Aggregate IQ to take pictures of him as he walked about in his fashion.
Yeah.
So anyway, I can imagine that if we were to look into where other donations went, there may be similar stories.
Well, if you look at the expenses, the DUP, Ulster Unionists, basically were also given, I think, around £300,000 a few days before the Brexit campaign, before the vote happened, and they also spent that money with Aggregate IQ.
It looks like essentially what we're getting at here, and again, we can't be 100% certain, but from
we can be certain that nearly £7 million was spent with Aggregate IQ, and that it was spent by a number of disparate groups who are supposedly unconnected, because it's
illegal.
It's actually this is the crux of the issue, right? There are rules on how much can be spent by one campaign in this referendum, and if these people are proven to have all been working together and all being coordinated to spend all this money with Aggregate IQ, rather than having chosen to do it individually, then that would be a legal issue.
Yes, and what we can definitely be sure is that a big massive chunk of the money that was given to a fashion designer who was 23 went to Aggregate IQ because he admitted it in an article to the Metro.
Now, I would suggest that Aggregate IQ they don't have a massive fingerprint on the internet. They're not an easy company to find, and even if you do find them, they only have a one-page website.
I will actually go further than that and say pretty much any company that isn't directly SCL or Cambridge Analytica that's in any way, shape or form affiliated with Cambridge Analytica or SCL Group really have quite a small fucking footprint on the internet, and so do many of the directors.
Oh yeah, for sure.
As in, hunting these people down and getting information off them is really difficult. I mean, guys like Robert Mercer, it's dead easy because he's fucking existed forever. Do you know what I mean? Essentially, he's not existed forever.
Sorry.
So he's not immortal. I'm pretty confident of that. But he's existed for a long time on the internet. So he's existed from a time before this was an issue that had to be covered up. But the guys who are directly doing this, there's not as much information on them as there is on pretty much anything else. It's very difficult to find out stuff on them.
Yeah, it's also telling and noteworthy that Aggregate IQ's website is of a very similar format to the websites of SCL Group and
SCL
Cambridge
Analytica. And Cambridge Analytica and the other companies we can find that are affiliated with all have very, very similar templates. Now granted, you could argue that it was maybe just like a WordPress template or something they were using, but going to the idea that all these companies are in some way, shape or form designed to be doing media on the internet, you would imagine that they're not using standard WordPress templates. It would be lazy.
There's also another company, another charity who were given £100,000 by Vote Leave and chose to spend it on Aggregate IQ, and that was Veterans for Britain.
But they chose to do that.
They chose to do it
off their own back. They were just like, who am I going to choose to help us with my social media? I bet there's a company in Canada that does that. Yeah.
So yeah, a DUP. Sorry, I think I said that the DUP spent 300,000. It was actually 32,000 odd pounds. But yeah, they spent that with Aggregate IQ as well. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. VoteLeave.eu spent 3.9 million with Aggregate IQ. So one thing that we know for sure in all of this is that it's a fucking lucrative business.
So there's another thing to now think about as we look at current news. So recently,
Nigel Farage
is now a person of interest to the FBI who's doing the investigation on the Trump/Russia scandal and everything that goes off the back of it. Now, that might just be coincidence.
But he is another person who is tied in with Robert Mercer, with Steve Bannon, with all of these people. There's definitely no doubt that there are links, but be they friendship links, be they working relationship links, These people are all joined to each other, and it's certainly interesting that the FBI have now noted Nigel Farage as a person of interest. This, to me, and this is my personal opinion that I'm stating here right now, I don't have any evidence of this, but as I've looked at all the information that is available on this online, and the more that I've read, the more that I look at the way that the federal investigation into the Trump-Russia scandal is going right now, the more that I am inclined to believe it's a possibility that the way that the media are reporting that investigation is not quite correct. I think it's possible that the feds are actually, what they're investigating is the work that these data analysis companies have been doing in these campaigns.
I mean, you are talking about the financial backer for Donald Trump, who has worked and financially funded two separate companies that a guy who was the strategic planner for Donald Trump was in charge of. The guy's daughter was part of the transition team for Donald Trump. His good friend Nigel Farage was in charge of the Leave campaign, who are affiliated with a company that, at least The Guardian, if nothing else, has shown links to them, to his company that's in the United States, that are all linked to Nigel Oakes' company. And Nigel Oakes is essentially a guy who came up with this being a bad bastard thing and collecting loads of money, collecting loads of information off people and being able to use it to point information and to point adverts and stuff at people, essentially psychological warfare, as they state, psychological warfare, to be able to do things. The fact that the whole investigation kicked off to do with Trump was to do with Russia pretty much doing that. The fact that Putin came out in the last couple of days and said Russians have been involved in doing stuff with Trump,
but not officially.
But not Russia.
Yeah,
Russians.
I think he said that patriotic Russians may have been involved in doing this, but it was not like a state sanctioned.
It wasn't Russians as in.
It wasn't a state sanctioned operation.
It was just people who were Russian.
But yeah, whether that's a bit of misdirection or whatever, I don't know. But yeah.
But so like I said, you do have, like at the start of this, when we started talking, you do have Google get mentioned, and you do have companies that have got no affiliation to any of these companies, even though we know they definitely had meetings with them. And you do have...
Well, you've got Palantir.
You've got voice recognition software gurus. You've got lots of components. You've got a guy who owns 10% in Facebook involved in all this chat. And essentially, like, it paints this massive picture of, like, where fake news comes from. Do you know what I mean? Maybe not all fake news, but a lot of fake news. Where misdirection, intentional propaganda comes from.
It also like, it makes you very aware of how easy it can be to manipulate the things that are coming through to you, like on your Facebook feed, on your Twitter, you know, on whatever social media you're using, even, you know, in your Google searches, you know, like there's a company in Canada, what was the name of them again?
It's the company that's just down the road from them.
Metamend.
Yeah, Metamend.
Yeah. So we through looking into aggregate IQ and trying to find some more information about them, we have found potential.
So essentially, this is just stuff that we were looking at, and some names came up that if you actually follow the names and then you look at what this company in question does, for example.
Yeah, so there's a guy called Chris Wiley, right, who's mentioned in the Guardian article. He refused to comment when asked for a comment by them, but basically a source at an ex-Cambridge Analytica employee pointed the journalist who wrote that article to a guy called Chris Wiley, who works for Aggregate IQ. So basically, it says that when the journalist met this guy who was the ex-employee of Cambridge Analytica, he said he had mentioned, this Carol had mentioned that she was having a bit of problem, like finding out information about Aggregate IQ, and he laughed and said, well, you have to find Chris Wiley. So the reporter asked, who's Chris Wiley? And and this guy said he's the one who brought data and micro-targeting to Cambridge Analytica. He's from West Canada. It's only because of him that aggregate IQ exists. They're his friends. He's the one who brought them in. He says that the Canadians were our back office. They built our software for us. They held our database. If aggregate IQ is involved, then Cambridge Analytica is involved. And if Cambridge Analytica is involved, then Robert Mercer and Steve Bannon are involved. You need to find Chris Wiley. Now, this Chris Wiley guy refused to comment, but...
We had real problems finding Chris Wiley, but after a bit of Googling and a bit of fucking about, I managed to find, weirdly, and I imagine that because as soon as this episode goes out, it's going to be fucking pulled down, but I do have screenshots. Essentially, when I searched for him, his name comes up alongside a company called MetaMind.
MetaMind, yeah.
No,
it's... I think...
I can pull up the screenshot and show you, but essentially, his name comes up against a company.
MetaMind. Sorry.
So, his name comes up against MetaMind, and only if you search directly with MetaMind and his name, it shows you it's almost as if it sits in the metadata somewhere in the background.
Now, weirdly enough, you're not going to believe this, but their website looks really similar to Cambridge Analytica and SCL.
Also, I have also done a Control F amongst other things and searched about for his name, and I can't find his name, but it must sit somewhere because it came up as a Google search.
So he is related to this MetaMind company in some way, according to Google.
Yes.
And the reason that I brought MetaMind up is because they are advertising themselves as a search engine optimization company. So where I was going with that is I was saying to you, it gives you an insight into how Facebook, is able to be manipulated, how people can manipulate the things that you're getting through your timelines, etc., and your news feed. But also Google is potentially open to this as well through search engine optimization. People can alter what's coming up when you search for things too. And this is a company which has, certainly on the face of it, from our research, appears to have links to aggregate IQ.
Well, so essentially, we can't even 100% say that, but what I can say is, if you search for Chris Wiley and MetaMind, Chris Wiley comes up as his name is involved.
And interestingly enough, they are both registered to the same city in British Columbia and Canada.
Actually further than that, they actually is 8 minutes away as the fucking on the main road from between the two offices.
Yeah.
That might just be convenient, but considering the guy in question that's called Chris Wiley is meant to be somebody from West Canada who helped set up Aggregate IQ and was involved in that, and also is then linked to this MetaMind company.
Yeah.
So certainly by Google.
So they are both to be found in Victoria, British Columbia, MetaMind and Aggregate IQ.
It might not be related, but it seems like it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that they might be.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff with this. There's a lot of words in heavy and company and stuff like this. But essentially, what it boils down to is that what the Guardian brought to us, and then what we found off the other side of it, is there is a media cabal that sits in social media.
I'd say more a tech cabal.
Oh, tech cabal, yeah, certainly, but social media focused, that use social media and have access to be able to use social media.
And are quite brazen and open in claiming that they are able to influence elections.
I mean, I can't get to stress this, they don't fucking hide it at all. I mean, it says it on their website.
We'll put the links up to all their websites, yeah.
I mean, they have case studies on their website where they talk about making people vote particular ways.
Yeah, and they have SCL in particular and Cambridge Analytica, they have case studies on all of the different countries that they have done this stuff in.
Weirdly, SCL's election website
component
was down today.
Yeah, we tried to go into SCL elections and we just got a bunch of fucking squiggly fucking words and numbers.
Yeah, the page was down today, and that seems
we got a plain text.
Yeah, that was oddly convenient that it went down roughly about the same time as we're all distancing each other from each other, and maybe coincidence.
Maybe. But yeah, this is definitely a finger on the pulse type story. it's going to develop, I'm sure, and it's going to be interesting.
You're going to see these names, you're going to see these companies, then you're not going to see them because you're going to fucking delete it all, deny it all, and get rid of it all. And the billionaires who own the fucking media in the UK are going to tell you that, I don't know, American Standard or some shit, because that's what we get all the fucking time. But essentially, you will see these names come up.
Yeah.
I'm relatively confident.
So that's basically all that we really have to put towards you. I hope we've explained that whole thing well. A couple of other little things that have came up for like stuff in our previous podcasts. Today, the BBC gave a reply to the Freedom of Information request that was put in last month regarding the council election thing we were talking about. And
essentially, the BBC have said, we don't need to give you that information, so we're not going to give you that information.
Yeah. So for people who haven't heard episode 3, essentially there was council elections here. The BBC kind of reported that the SNP had lost about 7 seats. In actual fact, they'd gained about 7 seats.
6 seats.
And they said that this data was based on notional, in inverted commas, data, because there had been boundary changes since the last council election. So
no other party was off with as much as SNP.
Yeah, they were massively. So the data was skewed.
SNP looked like they had done substantially worse than everyone else had done in the election. Yeah,
and that was the sort of headline news on the BBC when they were talking about the Scottish council elections. Anyway, this guy put a Freedom of Information request in to say, well, okay, that's fine. I understand that you've used notional data. Could you please explain to us how you came up with this notional data? And the BBC basically went, no,
we don't have to.
No, we're not going to do that. Which seems like, you know, if there was no wrongdoing there, it might have been easier for them to just go, yeah, this is what we did, so now you can see. So
Devil's advocate defence is obviously the BBC are concerned that, you know, someone's going to steal their really good analytics and algorithms that they're using to create this stuff. I mean, I will say that the algorithms are off as fuck. So nobody wants to steal broken algorithms. Literally no one wants to steal
but that. Yeah, that would certainly be their argument, and you know, I suppose there is an argument for that. But the other side of that is that they could surely at least show us the number of seats that all of the parties had based on their notional data, right? Or where they were.
Oh yeah. I mean certainly there's a lot of questions that have to be asked, but like I said, it doesn't matter if you ask them because they've said no.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, I think there's a right of appeal, but I think it's the original guy who put in the Freedom of Information request that has to make the appeal. So, myself and Paul might be in touch with him in the near future. So
we're going to harass him and make him do it.
Yeah. The other thing which has happened in the last couple of days, which is kind of breaking news, is that as predicted on episode 3, the CPS have brought a charge against members of the Conservative Party in relation to election fraud. So Craig McKinley, who's the MP for South Thanet, has been charged by the CPS, as has his election officer and another party official, some woman. So yeah, that's it's interesting because the Tories only had a majority of about 6 seats. We think that they called the snap election because they were worried that this CPS trial could have caused them problems, and that seems to be justified by the fact that the CPS have now charged this guy. Weirdly though, he's still allowed to run in this election.
I mean, I'm not shocked with that. The reason I'm not shocked with that is because, on my personal opinion, the way that the media have treated Jeremy Corbyn, the way that they've accepted the fact that Theresa May isn't going to stand for any questions and just generally is going to, like, I don't know, fucking kill puppies and shit and all the other stuff that she's decided to do or whatever it is.
Do you want to buy a puppy? Third party puppy salesman.
That's what they call me. But yeah, I mean, the way that he's been treated, like, fucking the Tories in the UK get away with murder, like, wait, that might be libel. They don't get away with murder. But yeah, I mean, they do get away with so much that they shouldn't be, personally, I believe, getting away with. So the fact he's able to run doesn't shock me. I can fucking guarantee you, if it was a Labour MP, he wouldn't be able to still run.
If I had my conspiratorial head on, I might suggest that them waiting till now and prosecuting one of the 12 who were up on charges might just make it look like, oh, well, look, we were prepared to charge these people if there was enough evidence. But he was the only one that had any evidence, so he's the only one we've charged.
It does seem that way. I mean, that's sort of conjecture on our part. I mean, that's no part of fake news. That's no part of our show. That's just the way it feels at the present moment. It's so disheartening to watch the news and to watch what's happening in the UK, because it's just so one-sided. And absolutely and definitely the reason it's so one-sided is because the Tories have said in a manifesto that they're not going to fucking do anything against the billionaires that own the fucking press. And that's definitely why. I will happily say that. You know what I mean?
And they're going to roll back Section 40 of whatever that fucking bill was.
To make sure that they're not held accountable for...
well, they don't have to pay...
they don't get fined for it. There's not a regulatory committee that sits above them.
And that they don't have to pay for both sides of, like a libel case or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's much better for them. Almost as if you were a pile of billionaires that owned all the fucking media, you would probably be quite willing to make sure that Theresa May get in again. Yeah,
it's Section 40 of the Crime and Courts Act 2014. So they have said that they'll repeal in their manifesto. We mentioned this in 3.5, but to anybody that hasn't listened to that, it basically means that it would force... Section 40 would have forced media organisations to become members of a regulatory system, and if they get rid of it, it means that they won't have to pay the legal costs of both sides in libel and privacy cases. So yeah, the Tories have said they're going to get rid of that, and that's probably the main reason why they're getting a lot of support in the media. However, interestingly enough, a month ago when we did episode 3, I think I stated that fucking this is going to be a shoe-in win for the Tories. I can't really see anything other than a Tory win, but the polls are suggesting, and Theresa May's increasingly erratic behaviour is suggesting that this might be a fucking tight-ran thing.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, right now, as things stand, my prediction would be a Labour SNP coalition to prevent the Tories. That's genuinely what I think.
That's what you think is going to happen?
Yeah. That's my call.
Well, that's a big call, Paul.
I know.
I don't think I'm prepared. I think, unfortunately, I still think the Tories are gonna get a majority by the skin of their teeth. But I don't think it's going to be any larger. I think it's going to be
in Scotland. I think.
Do you?
Yes, I think SNP are going to have 45-ish seats in Scotland. I think Labour's going to pick up more seats than anybody was expecting.
I entirely disagree. I expect the SNP to pick up 50 seats or so, but we'll soon find out, because in around 5 days we have a general election here.
Yeah, we'll know the answer. So you don't have to fucking listen to this before then. Just so you just know that this was the chat. Otherwise, it'll look like I cut it in at the end. Like I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, but anyway, thanks very much for listening, folk. We will be back next month with some news. We'll probably I can see us doing some live tweeting or live social media stuff on the night of the general election, probably.
I would imagine so. We're also going to get some videos up on YouTube, because they seem to went down a treat. For most people, one person wasn't his best player, but everyone else seems to have enjoyed it.
You know that you've made it on the internet when you're getting hate from randoms that you don't know.
And so, yeah, I mean, and on that note, like we said at the start, we're on PGMcast on everything, literally everything. I mean, we're on Pinterest, and we're on Minds. It's a bit mental, but we're on Minds, Fid.me, and we're on YouTube, and we're on Facebook, and we're on Twitter, and we're on our website at notanotherfakenewscast.com.
www.notanotherfakenewscast.com.
We're on our Patreon, and we would love some support. It really would mean the world to us. Oh, we've got a TeePublic site, so you can get t-shirts with our logo on it, or fake
libel,
fake as fuck news, so you can wear a drinking t-shirt, and yeah. And the other thing is Great and Small Doses.
Yes, so we've put the link up on our social media the past couple of days, but for this new episode, on the website, I'm going to put up a link to so that people can buy our theme tune. Kev O'Malley, fantastic musician, great voice, great wee song that he did for us, man. I'm sure you all agree. So he's currently trying to fund his way through a PhD, and if you buy this theme tune, all the proceeds are going to go to Kev. So please get
That's the
involved
thing.
in that.
See if you're going to put money into one of the things, don't put it into our Patreon or our
Yeah,
t-shirts.
put it
into
into-
Kev because he deserves it. Don't put it into Kev because
Just
he's,
don't push your money into his orifices.
unless he asks. And anyway. No, but don't. But yes, please donate to him because he deserves it. I mean, all of his own back. He wrote it, he produced it, he recorded it, he done everything, and he sent us it, and he didn't need to. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it would be amazing if you could help him out.
Yeah, very much so. So yeah, thanks again for listening, man, and peace out.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a short one for us today. So yeah, peace out.